Call to order.
We've decided on your order of questioners here. I know it's a long time yet, but have you done your list, this list? Are you happy with the order?
Yes, yes. Dear members of OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Vienna.
You need to use your microphone. Try this one.
Dear members, no, it doesn't work. Dear members, here, it
They
works.
can hear you. We can't hear you because we haven't got our headphones on.
Welcome to Vienna. Before we begin, may I kindly ask you to use the headphones? May I kindly ask you to use the headphones, otherwise you don't hear me. The headphone, please. Dear members of OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Vienna for OSCE Parliamentary Winter Meeting. Before we begin, I kindly ask you to use your headphones. That's the only way to listen, to hear, as well what I say, as well as what your colleagues say. And also, please note that this meeting is being recorded and is broadcasted on the OSCE PA's social media platform and website. Please also note that as announced by the table office and in the line with Rule 7027 to only members who have entered their names on the speakers list no later than 1 hour before the opening of our committee meetings and joint session will be given the floor. And thank you for your cooperation. And I have now the pleasure to welcome today the President of the Austrian National Council, Mr. Wolfgang Sobotka. And I will give President Wolfgang Sobotka the floor immediately before announcing the other speakers. And this is because Mr. President had to go to the Austrian Parliament for an important sessions that start at 10 o'clock. So it's a courtesy, and thank you once again and mostly welcome, Mr. President.
Vielen herzlichen Dank, Frau Präsidentin Cederfeld. Ich darf Sie recht herzlich begrüßen und danke für das Verständnis, denn wir haben morgen auch eine Sondersitzung anlässlich des Jahrestages, des traurigen Jahrestages des Krieges in der Ukraine. Sehr geehrte Kolleginnen und Kollegen, sehr geehrte Frau Präsidentin Cederfeld, sehr geehrter Generalsekretär Montella, werte Damen und Herren des Vorsitzes. Es ist mir eine ganz große Freude, Sie nach 3 Jahren wieder in Präsenz begrüßen zu dürfen. Letztes Jahr hatten wir ja nur ein hybrides Meeting und es waren nur die Delegationsleiter hier. Wir wissen aufgrund von Sicherheitsvorkehrungen, dass noch Kollegen unten stehen, aber schon langsam wird sich auch der Saal füllen. Ich darf Sie alle Parlamentarier recht herzlich zur OSZE-Wintertagung begrüßen, die eine lange Tradition hat und die jetzt bereits zum 22. Mal hier in Wien stattfindet. Angesichts der aktuellen Krisenherde in der OSZE und im OSZE-Raum kommt dieser heurigen Tagung eine besondere Bedeutung zu. Vor einem Jahr am 24. Februar 2022 ist der Krieg auf dem europäischen Kontinent zurückgekehrt. Niemand dachte, dass das nach diesen schrecklichen Kriegen des 20. Jahrhunderts im 21. Jahrhundert noch möglich sei. Nur wenige Stunden nach dem russischen Überfall auf die Ukraine kamen wir als Parlamentarierinnen und Parlamentarier hier in der Hofburg in Wien zusammen und haben diese massive und brutale Grenzüberschreitung ganz klar auch verurteilt. Eine Überschreitung der physischen Grenzen der Ukraine, eines souveränen Staates mit Soldaten, Panzern und Raketen, ist eine eklatante Überschreitung aller Grenzen des Völkerrechts und der Charta der Vereinten Nationen. Wir verurteilen diesen Angriffskrieg und größten Tabubruch seit dem Zweiten Weltkrieg neuerlich auf das Allerschärfste. Und wir stehen in ungeteilter Solidarität an der Seite der ukrainischen Regierung und auch des ukrainischen Volkes. Welche Auswirkungen dieser Krieg auf die nach dem Ende des Zweiten Weltkriegs geschaffene Friedensordnung haben wird, lässt sich derzeit nicht abschätzen. Aber gerade wir als politische Verantwortungsträger sind hier gefordert und müssen schon heute damit beginnen, auch an den Tag danach zu denken. Auch wenn jeder Krieg endet auch einmal. Auch wenn dieses angesichts der Brutalität des Krieges bei uns heute nicht leicht ist. Aber gerade als Mitglieder der OSZE und unserer Parlamentarischen Versammlung sind wir angehalten, ja, es ist vielmehr unsere Pflicht, die Tür der Diplomatie nicht zuzuschlagen. Der OSZE mit ihrem inklusiven Ansatz und umfassenden Sicherheitskonzept kann und vor allem soll ein Teil einer Lösung dieses Konfliktes sein. Wir müssen alles unternehmen, damit die Diplomatie nicht endet, gerade auf der Ebene der Parlamente. Als weltweit größte regionale Sicherheitsorganisation ist die OSZE und erinnern wir uns an ihr Entstehen in den Spannungsjahren des Kalten Krieges und des Bemühens, eine neue Friedensordnung zu schaffen. Gerade ist diese OSZE als größte Sicherheitsorganisation und damit auch unsere Parlamentarische Versammlung eine Plattform für Dialog und Konfliktprävention beziehungsweise Konfliktbewältigung in besonderem Maße gefordert. Nicht nur diesen Krieg in der Ukraine ist diese Resilienz unserer Demokratien in den vergangenen Monaten massiv unter Druck geraten. Wir sind in einem breiten Spektrum von Sicherheitsfragen gefordert, gemeinsame Wege zu finden, um Stabilität, Frieden und eine entwickelte Demokratie auch zu ermöglichen. Etwa bei der Bekämpfung des Terrorismus, wo Einigkeit und Solidarität besonders wesentlich ist. Hier hat vor allem das Antiterrorismus-Komitee der OSZE eine Vorbildfunktion für die Förderung von Dialog und interparlamentarischer Zusammenarbeit, sowohl innerhalb der OSZE als auch in Kooperation mit wichtigen Partnern wie den Vereinten Nationen. Es ist mir ein besonders wichtiges Anliegen, auch die Bekämpfung von Antisemitismus, der in den vergangenen Jahren ganz besonders wieder im Steigen ist und einen erschreckenden Zulauf genommen hat, dementsprechend in unsere Mitte unserer Aufmerksamkeit zu rücken. Es ist die Aufgabe und Verantwortung der Parlamente, sich weiterhin für die Sichtbarkeit und einen adäquaten rechtlichen Rahmen für die Bekämpfung von Antisemitismus einzusetzen. Denn Antisemitismus ist per se antidemokratisch. Er kommt aus der Mitte der Gesellschaft, aus einer negativen kulturellen Haltung seit 2000 Jahren des Antijudaismus und taucht auf den linken, auf den rechten und den migrantischen Rändern unserer Gesellschaft auf. Wir müssen allen extremistischen, radikalen und terroristischen Haltungen entgegenwirken und diese gemeinsam und vor allem effektiv bekämpfen, um unsere Bevölkerung und unsere Werte zu schützen. Die OSZE und unsere Versammlung leisten dazu einen ganz wesentlichen Beitrag. Ein ganz zentraler Aspekt für unsere Zukunft ist auch die Förderung von Jugend und Demokratie. Jede Generation, auch von Parlamentariern, muss sich ihre demokratischen Haltungen auch gemeinsam mit der Bevölkerung wieder neu erkämpfen. Hier unterstützt die OSZE, die Parlamentarische Versammlung, stets neue wertvolle Initiativen wie das Young Parliamentarian Network, das sich in den vergangenen Tagen, in beiden Tagen in Wien getroffen hat. Die Stärkung des Interesses junger Menschen an der Demokratie ist von zentraler Bedeutung für die Zukunft unserer Länder. Wir sehen das gerade, wir haben im Jänner unser Parlament wieder bezogen an der Ringstraße, wo ich Sie heute am Abend dann empfangen darf und herzlich einladen darf zu kommen, dass gerade die Jugend einen besonderen Raum auch in unseren Parlamenten braucht und junge Parlamentarier auch Demokratie dort erklären können in unserer Demokratiewerkstatt, wo 40.000 Jugendliche Jahr für Jahr mit Demokratie, mit dem Werden des Rechtsstaates und dem Werden von Gesetzen konfrontiert werden. Zum Abschluss darf ich herzlich danken der polnischen Vorsitzführung für ihre Arbeit im Jahre 2022 in schon sehr herausfordernden Zeiten. Ich wünsche Nordmazedonien für den Vorsitz 2023 alles Gute, viel Erfolg und die Möglichkeit, auch wertvolle Beiträge zu leisten. Ich kann Ihnen versichern, dass das österreichische Parlament sich weiter intensiv um die Parlamentarische Versammlung kümmert und sich einbringt. Ich hoffe, Sie auch nächstes Jahr dann so hoffentlich in weniger dramatischen Rahmenbedingungen, unter weniger dramatischen Rahmenbedingungen wieder hier in Wien begrüßen zu dürfen. Das ist unser innigster Wunsch, dass wir wieder zu einer neuen Friedensordnung zurückfinden. In diesem Sinne, herzlich willkommen in Wien und alles Gute für unsere heutige Tagung. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for your welcome remarks. And as we know that you are very busy and have to be for duties in the Austrian Parliament, we respect, of course, when it's important for you to leave. Then I will follow here that due to his travel schedule, the OSCE chairman in office and foreign minister of North Macedonia, Mr. Busha Osmani, will address us through a record video. Mr. Osmani is on his way to the United Nations in New York. The Secretary General of the OSCE, Ms. Helga Schmidt, is accompanying the chairman in office in New York, but she is asked the director of the Secretary General's office, Ambassador Luca Franati, to deliver remarks on her behalf. In spite of these circumstances, we will still hold a question and answer session. Ambassador Frattini will do his best to respond, but some questions may need to be answered in writing at a later stage. Dear members of OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, for the past year, we have mourned the victims of Russia's war in Ukraine. There is reports on daily basis about civilians who have died, with those who serve to defend their country in different warriors' duties are dead. But we have also heard during the last 2 weeks about the devastating earthquake in Turkey and Syria. And it has provoked incalculable human loss under pretext. And may I please ask you to join me in a minute of silence in honor for the victims of the Russia's war in Ukraine and the victims for the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Thank you very much. And now let's go further on the agenda to number 2 is the address by the President of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, Ms. Margareta Cederfelt, and that's me. Mr. Speaker, President Wolfgang Sobotka, Ambassador Mr. Lucia Frattini, honorables, fellow parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen. Let me go straight to the point. Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine has shattered European security. For the past year, every single principle of the Helsinki Final Act has been violated by the Russian Federation. May I ask for silence in the room? Point of order.
Use your bell.
May I ask for silence in the room? Thank you. As a direct result of Russia's actions, our entire region is spiraling into the unknown. And as a consequence, the OSCE and the Parliamentary Assembly find ourselves at the crossroads. You are here today, dear parliamentarians, and so am I, to take that the OSCE has strong advocates through the OSCE region, and take it at the most of you that believe in the power of international organization and international solidarity. The efforts deployed by many participating states to respond to the devastating earthquake in Turkey and Syria illustrate this. Multilateralism has never been easy and straightforward, but today, considering our membership and our consensus-based rules, it is particularly challenging. How can we move forward if the countries responsible for devastating our common security are also the ones crippling the OSCE? The task is enormous. Today, some are ready to write an obituary of the OSCE because large-scale war has returned to the heart of Europe. Because the OSCE would have failed to prevent the collapse of peace and cooperation in Europe. To those, let us be clear, the OSCE should not be held responsible for the deliberate actions of participating states intent on violating every principle of international law and waging a war of aggression on a neighboring country. Rather, we should continue to protect our decades-long engagement for peace and security. We should continue to fight for improvements that the OSCE makes in the daily lives of our citizens. And we must continue to defend the unique role of OSCE Parliamentary Assembly as a platform for principle-based dialogue, to respect the people who have elected us as parliamentarians. We are here today as members of our national parliaments, and that's what our parliament expect from us, That's what our colleagues in our parliament expect from us. And it's what those who have elected us expect from us. And here again, let me be clear, the OSCE PA has always been open to frank and honest dialogue, rooted in our shared values and commitment. But those does not mean that the Parliamentary Assembly should provide an unrestricted platform to spew propaganda and promote war of aggression. Although I find the situation very unfortunate, I do sympathize with the fact that some members find it unbearable to sit in the same room as the aggressors. But for those present today, this is your opportunity to stand up for Ukraine and to confront the lies from the aggressors. Fellow parliamentarians, more than a country and a half ago, the Russian author wrote, "War is so unjust and ugly that all who wage it must try to stifle the voice of conscience within themselves." Some in this room have trampled their mandates, while we have spent decades promoting the role of parliamentarians as agents of peace. Some have become promoters of war, murder, and destruction. Today, some parliamentarians are aiding and abetting the crime of aggression. They have willingly and knowingly created these conditions over several years by gradually destroying civil rights, by dismantling civil society, by suppressing free expression and independent media, and by undermining election integrity. They must bear responsibility for their actions. Our disgust at the innumerable crimes committed by the Russian aggressors feeds our deep empathy for Ukrainians' victims. It drives us to work together to bring all those responsible to face justice. Because allowing impunity for war crimes, for crimes against humanity, and for crimes of aggression would put the final nail in the coffin of our collective security. Today, it is our political responsibility to ensure that international obligations and commitments truly mean what we say. Colleagues, this winter meeting should provide you with ample time to debate security in all three dimensions of the OSCE. It is also a great opportunity for us parliamentarians to exchange with the executive structures of our organization. In a way, the winter meeting should serve to oil the wheels of the OSCE, to make sure that parliaments and governments pull together in the same direction for the European security order, for an order-based world and region, and for respect of rule of law, democracy, sovereignty, international recognized border. In our discussion, it must be said about what will happen to the OSCE in the years to come. On the issue, I count on your strong support, on your political influence, and in your ability to mobilize public opinions to advocate vigorously on behalf of our organization. OSCE Parliamentary Assembly has a long tradition of advocating for more on behalf of the OSCE, more presence on the ground, more financial resources, and more high-level political attention. Now is not the time to give up on those commitments. After tomorrow, we have to bring our energy and this message back to our capitals, to our national parliament, to our constituency, that together we can overcome this existential challenge and continue to build the 5 decades of European security cooperation. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's move on to number 3, address by chairman in office of the, who is not, of the office of a minister of foreign affairs of North Macedonia, Mr. Busha Osmani. And as announced previously, the chairman in office is currently traveling to New York and United Nations. So we will now hear a recorded address.
President Söderfeldt, President Sobotka, honorable members of Parliament, Excellencies, colleagues, friends. At the outset, please accept my apologies for not being there with you today in person. As you know, I am on my way to New York for a special session of the United Nations General Assembly marking 1 year from the Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine. I would have loved to be with you in Vienna at this time of the year when the parliamentary dimension meets the governmental one. But I already looking forward to your annual session in Vancouver in July. This OSCE Parliamentary Assembly winter meeting comes at a very difficult times for the whole European security architecture. This is also true for our organization. The very founding principles of the OSCE have been shattered. However, as chairman in office, and as someone who values the role and the utility of parliamentary diplomacy, I encourage you to engage constructively in this important parliamentary forum. As you know, our chairpersonship motto and driving force is, it's about people. As difficult as it may be, we need to preserve the OSCE and its mechanisms. The people of the OSCE region expect from us to deliver. Last month, officially opening our chairpersonship, I chose to quote Mother Teresa, and I will do it again. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow has not yet come, we have only today. Let us begin. In the spirit of this word and noble calling, I would like to urge you, directly elected representatives, esteemed members of Parliament, first, to keep the faith in our organization. Second, to foster the much-needed political will. And third, continue invest in the OSCE, enabling it to pursue its unique mandate. I will again reiterate that this war is no reason for defeatism. It is a reason to rather scale up our efforts in order to prevail. This understands 2 key issues: protecting and promoting our founding principles and commitments, preserving the OSCE, and putting its conflict resolution toolbox at your disposal. In the name of those principles we all pledge to. The Helsinki values are non-negotiable, and we will stand behind them as a devout guardian. Honorable parliamentarians, tomorrow, 24th February, will mark 1 year since the start of the Russians' illegal and unprovoked aggression against Ukraine. Since then, we have not only witnessed occupation and sham annexation of territories, but also brutal war crimes against civilians and immense human suffering. The toll on lives is defeating and unacceptable. We condemn this in the strongest of terms and urge the Russian Federation to an immediate ceasefire and to choose the path of diplomacy over war. We stand by Ukraine and the Ukrainian people in their suffering. The war against Ukraine will remain the first and central priority for the 2023 chairpersonship of North Macedonia. Naturally, we will maintain also high attention to all protracted conflicts across the OSCE region, address regional instabilities and their impact on people. It is important that the OSCE remains an effective provider in the whole conflict cycle framework. This also goes for the OSCE overall presence on the ground. Hosting an OSCE field mission ourselves, we can testify firsthand to the benefits the organization brings to our people, and we will strive to reinforce the attention on OSCE field work, which proves the relevance of our organization every day. When it comes to thematic priorities, in the first dimension, we will pay particular attention to cybersecurity and hybrid threats, border security, arms control, and the women, peace and security agenda. In the second dimension, focus will be conveyed to preventing and combating corruption and promoting good governance, addressing the impact of the climate crisis and discussing energy and food security, alongside connectivity issues. In the third dimension, we prioritize tackling discrimination and intolerance, promoting reconciliation, social inclusion and integration, combating trafficking in human beings, fostering freedom of the media and gender equality. We also intend to step up our efforts on youth empowerment. Madam President, dear member of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, we strongly value your work and your commitment, your dedication also through the plenary debates, the work of the general and ad hoc committees, of the special representatives, and of the several other networks and initiatives is remarkable. I truly appreciate your efforts to support the OSCE fundamentals. This is our shared goal. Dialogue among legislators across the region is fundamental, alongside your distinct capacity to promote and translate OSCE commitments into national legislation. You are the ones that can turn OSCE deliberations into reality, into facts. From a chairpersonship perspective, your yearly resolutions are also a crucially important document, as they offer useful insight on how to craft our work in a true spirit of parliamentary governmental exchanges and cooperation. In conclusion, I thank you, President Söderfeldt, for your leadership, and thank you also to Secretary General Montella and the Parliamentary Assembly International Secretariat for your tireless work and for your excellent coordination. I look forward to a fruitful work with you during 2023 and send you my best wishes for your deliberations today and tomorrow in Vienna. Even if far away, I will follow you closely. Till Vancouver, thank you so much.
And thank you to Chairperson in Office, Foreign Minister of North Macedonia, Mr. Busha Osmani. And then go further on the agenda. Number 4, address by Secretary General of OSCE, Ms. Helga Smith. Secretary General Ms. Smith is also unable to join us today, and her address will be delivered through Ambassador Ms. Luca Frattini, who will deliver Ms. Secretary General's remarks. Madam Ambassador Ms. Luca Frattini, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. I happen to be a man, but
I am sorry, I apologize, but I read that something wrong. Thank you, sir. You are most welcome, Mr. Luca Frattini. My Italian is not the best. Thank you.
thank you, Madam President. As you announced, Secretary General Helga Maria Schmid regrets that she could not join in person today. It was her intention to deliver this message in her own voice by video, but we understand this was not possible, so she asked that I convey the remarks on her behalf, and I will do so now. This is the Secretary General's message to you. President Söderfeldt, distinguished members of the Parliamentary Assembly, Excellencies, colleagues, thank you for inviting me to address the winter meeting of the Parliamentary Assembly. I regret that I'm not able to join you in Vienna today, as I was invited by the current chair of the Security Council to take part in meetings in New York in the context of Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine. 1 year ago, I woke before dawn to a call from Kyiv. I could hear the sirens blaring as the city came under attack. I will never forget that day. Over the last year, this war has taken a terrible toll on the people of Ukraine, their government, and their country. It has affected the lives of so many beyond Ukraine's borders, from the nearest neighbors welcoming refugees and coping with increased insecurity, to those on other continents feeling the effects on food and energy supplies. The war has challenged the international rules-based order and caused some to question the role of multilateral organizations like ours. But my message today is not one of despair, but one of resolve. We continue to stand and deliver. The OSCE continues to stand for our principles. And the OSCE continues to deliver for our people, including the people in Ukraine. We stand for our principles, calling the Russian Federation to account for their actions, both through the Permanent Council meetings that take place every week in this very room, and through other tools like the Moscow mechanism, which was activated by a large majority of participating states last year. Still in 2022, we were forced to close our 2 missions in Ukraine. Despite all our tireless efforts, some of our colleagues, Ukrainian mission members who worked for our special monitoring mission, remain in detention in Donetsk and Luhansk. For more than 10 months now, Maxim Petrov and Dmytro Shabanov have been detained in Luhansk. In September, they were sentenced to 13 years in prison following so-called legal proceedings. Vadim Golda is facing a so-called trial this week in Donetsk. There is no transparency about these proceedings, and we do not have any reliable information about our colleagues' whereabouts or well-being. I continue to do all I can to secure their release and urge you to support these efforts as well. But while we had to close our field missions and while we continue to plead for our colleagues' release, we have returned to Ukraine with a multi-million euro support program, an entirely donor-funded effort to assist the government, civil society, and the people. Our now nearly 60-person team in Kyiv is working on more than 20 projects to address issues, including the impact of landmines, the environmental effects of the war, human trafficking, and many more. This includes support to women and girls in Ukraine because war is never gender blind. We also continue to work across all 3 dimensions in support of Moldova, Central Asia, Southeastern Europe, and beyond. Every day, through our field missions, as well as through projects run from the Secretariat and the institutions, the OSCE is supporting the governments and the people of our vast region. So despite the circumstances, despite the fact that we've had no agreed budget for last year, and we don't yet have a budget for this year, the OSCE continues to deliver. This is not easy. Our staff is particularly hard hit. They're doing incredible work in the face of tremendous uncertainty. I am grateful for their dedication and proud of the excellent work they do, but this budgetary situation is not sustainable. However, what we have built over nearly 50 years, what we have learned, and the expertise we've developed is vital today and will be into the future. The OSCE, for example, is a leader on combating human trafficking. The OSCE has a key role to play in fostering regional cooperation to address challenges from climate change. We have an essential role to play in so many aspects of security. On Monday, Minister Osmani and I were in Turkey to show solidarity for the victims of the terrible earthquakes that took so many lives in Turkey and Syria. Among other things, we discussed areas in which the OSCE is particularly qualified to provide support, including in the context of disaster risk reduction. There are so many more examples I could offer, but you know the value of the OSCE, you know the importance of our work, and the importance of continuing to stand for our principles and deliver for our people. Dear delegates, honorable parliamentarians, the work of the Parliamentary Assembly is an essential element of what the OSCE does. You know that sustainable security is not found in isolation, but in cooperation. In the face of violence and devastation, we should not abandon our principles, nor the tools we have built to support them, but rather use them in new and innovative ways. This is the work the OSCE is doing every day. Your role as the representatives of your communities and delegates to the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is critical. You provide vital connection between the 1.3 billion people of the OSCE region and the work that we do to support them. As our principles and structures are more needed, but more imperiled than ever, I look forward to working together to ensure that this organization can continue to stand for our principles and deliver a more peaceful and more secure future for us all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador Luca Frattini, for your speech and your remarks. Highly appreciated. And send our best wishes to Secretary General Helga Schmidt. And this was the last address on the agenda. But before I give the floor to members who have signed up to ask questions, I call Mr. Osuski of Slovakia to read an address on behalf of the Ukrainian delegation. Mr. Peter Osuski.
Lady President, honorable delegates, it's a great honor for me, the head of the delegation of the Parliament of the Slovak Republic, to present to all of you the official statement of the Ukrainian delegation to the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. The mere presence in the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly of individuals who deny the right to exist of a sovereign nation, culture and language, and who have publicly called for the physical extermination of Ukrainians in an organization that is supposed to promote peace, security and cooperation in Europe is absolutely abhorrent. How can we, as a civilized society, allow such war criminals and provocateurs of aggressive war to be present in an organization that is founded on the principles of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law? It is an insult to the victims of their atrocities, a slap in the face of justice, and the desecration of the memory of so many who have suffered at the hand of those who lost their morals, culture, and humanity. These people are not just mere provocateurs of war and aggression, but are war criminals who have committed unspeakable atrocities against innocent civilians. They have no place in the halls of diplomacy and cooperation, but should be in the dock of justice, where they must face the consequences of their heinous crimes. The international community must not turn a blind eye to such barbaric acts of aggression and genocide. It must act with urgency and determination to bring these criminals to justice and prevent such crimes from happening again. We call on all the members of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly to take a strong stance against the presence of such individuals in the organization and demand that they be excluded from any further varsity participation in its activities. We urge the international community to come together to establish a special international tribunal for Russian war of aggression and numerous crimes of aggression in Ukraine, so that justice is done and the victims are heard. The presence of these warmongers in Vienna is an affront to everything that OSCE stands for. They are not here for genuine dialogue, nor for cooperation. They are here to spread their propaganda and humiliate those who stand for freedom and justice. They are here to try and justify the war crimes they have committed and desecrate the principles of international law and human decency. Their very presence in this hall is a betrayal of thousands of elderly people, men, women, children, and newborns who have been brutally murdered as a result of Russia's brutal war. We can't let this to happen. We cannot allow them to get away with their crimes, who can continue to flaunt their aggression and to undermine the peace and security of Europe. We must take action, and we must take it now. We call the OSCE to remember its founding principles to protect security and cooperation and to stand against these warmongers. We call on the international community to come together and demand justice for the victims of their atrocities, to hold the Russian perpetrators accountable for their crimes, and to prevent such crimes from ever happening again. We cannot simply talk to Russian representatives. They will only use our words against us. We must fight with them with every tool at our disposal, through economic sanctions, through legal action, and through military defense if necessary. We must show them that their aggression will not be tolerated, that their crimes will not go unpunished, and that their vision of a world without rule will not prevail. Let us not forget the lessons of history, nor the cries of those who were robbed, raped, tortured, and killed. Let us demand that those who commit such atrocities be held accountable for their actions. The time for talking is over. Now it's the time for action. We must stand up for what is right, for what is just, and for the principles that the OSCE was founded upon. We must fight for the memory of the innocent victims and for the safety and security of all people. We must not let these warmongers win. Not now, not ever. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you, Mr. Osuski, head of the Slovakian delegation. And now I will give the floor to members who have signed up for questions. As we have very limited time left, it will not be possible for everybody to get the floor, but I will put you together 3 by 3 to save time and make it possible for more delegates to get the floor. I do first give the floor to Mr. Steve Cohen, member of the US delegation. The floor is yours, sir. He will be followed by.
Thank you, Madam President, and to the President and fellow parliamentarians. A year ago, we were here and we heard constantly Mr. Putin say he was not going to invade Ukraine. He said it up to the moment before they invaded. We know what he said were lies, and he said lies after lie after lie. Our delegation went to the Czech Republic before we came here. Their first prime minister, honored in the Czech Republic, said never be afraid to stand up and speak out, never steal, and never lie. Mr. Putin has made the Russian people overall be afraid to stand up and speak out, because if they do, they will be put in prison like Navalny, like Vladimir Kara-Murza, like other leaders who have stood up to say this is a war, and this is a war. He calls it a special military operation. I don't know what a special military operation is, but it's certainly not an event that takes not 7 days like he thought it would, but an event that has taken a year, and he's lost more territory since he started this war than he's gained. That is not a special military operation. That's a losing war. A special military operation is not a military exercise where you have to go to the Iranians to get drones and where you have to request aid from China to continue the war because you don't have sufficient military equipment and military abilities. A special military operation is not when you have to turn to the worst of the worst, the criminals who the Wagner Group have put in battle, getting pardons to go to battle. This is a war, and if you stand up and say it's a war in Russia, you'll go to jail. You will be imprisoned. What has happened is Russia has not allowed its people to see the truth. There are movies and books written about wars and the failure of wars and how leaders get the wars started, and the losers are the soldiers and their families and the country. There's a movie out now that I watched the other day, All Quiet on the Western Front, a German movie nominated for 9 Oscars. A book based on a book written in 1930 about how war cannot win, the insanity of it. Trench warfare for 4 years and no advance, but 3 million people dying. The fact is you cannot see that movie or read that book in Russia. And you couldn't read it in Nazi Germany because they burnt it and banned it. We need to see that the truth comes out in Russia so that Russian people can rejoin the world, the civilized world, and not be a piranha. So those are questions we need to ask. How do we bring Russia back into the OSCE, back into the Helsinki Accords, back into civilized society, and defend Ukraine and speak up for them and see that the war crimes committed against them, the genocide committed against them is rectified and brought to light. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Steve Cohen. And now I will give the floor to Mr. Robin Wagner from Germany, and he will be followed by Miss Carina Ödebrink from Sweden. And Mr. Robin Wagner, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Frau Präsidentin, meine Damen und Herren. Berichten wurde die dramatische Lage für den Frieden durch die russischen Verbrechen ausgesprochen deutlich. Als Russland in offenkundiger Aggression seine Truppen an der Grenze zusammengezogen hat, haben viele Staaten alles ihnen Mögliche versucht, um auf diplomatischem Wege den Frieden zu sichern. Am 24.02. des letzten Jahres schlug das verbrecherische Regime Putin alle diplomatischen Bemühungen für den Frieden aus. Es war allein die Entscheidung des Regimes im Kreml, mit seinen Soldaten die Grenze zur Ukraine zu überschreiten. Und Putin eskalierte damit, was er mit der illegalen Scheinannexion der Krim und dem Krieg in der Ostukraine bereits 2014 begonnen hat. Ungeachtet aller Märchen und Mythen, die das Lügenregime verbreitet, es war und ist alleine die Wahl und die Entscheidung des Regimes im Kreml und die Verantwortung all derjenigen, die dieses Regime stützen, die freie und demokratische Ukraine zu überfallen, mit dem Ziel, ihre Demokratie und Identität zu zerstören. Ein Jahr offener Angriffs- und Vernichtungskrieg bedeutet, unzählige Städte dem Erdboden gleichgemacht. Städte wie Mariupol, Sjeverodonezk, Popasna, Rubischne, Bachmut. Der Krieg bedeutet unfassbares Leid für die Menschen in der Ukraine. Millionen Menschen, die ihre Heimat, ihre Lieben und viel zu oft auch ihr Leben verloren haben. Und für die Menschen, die nicht fliehen konnten, bedeutet russische Okkupation Tod, Folter, Mord, Hunger, Vergewaltigung, Vertreibung. Russland, meine Damen und Herren, hat unzählige Kinder aus der Ukraine gestohlen und viele davon zwangsadoptieren lassen. Was für ein abscheuliches Verbrechen. Für das Verbrechen des Angriffskriegs und für die Verbrechen im Krieg werden sich die Entscheidungsträger an der Spitze, in der Regierung und im Parlament, in der Armeeführung und in den entscheidenden Eliten des Landes vor einem Tribunal verantworten müssen. Genau wie die Soldaten, die diese Verbrechen ausführen, die foltern, morden, vergewaltigen und plündern. Mit seinem verbrecherischen Angriffskrieg gegen die Ukraine hat sich Russland aber auch gegen die gemeinsame europäische Friedensordnung und den Geist von Helsinki gestellt. Und dieser Angriff kennt weitere Dimensionen. Die russische Blockadehaltung innerhalb der OSZE, gerade im Ministerrat, zeigt die Verachtung des Regimes für die Zusammenarbeit, und das wurde auch nochmal deutlich mit der jüngst angekündigten Aussetzung des New Start-Abkommens. Das Regime Putin hat kein Interesse an einer gemeinsamen Sicherheitsordnung und Sicherheitsverabredungen und Frieden. Das Regime will das Recht des Stärkeren, Autokratie und seinen Imperialismus durchsetzen. Und das darf und wird Russland nicht gelingen. Und darum folgt daraus nicht eine direkte Frage an Sie, sondern es erfolgt eine Frage und ein Auftrag an uns alle hier in dieser parlamentarischen Versammlung, uns genau dem entgegenzustellen, geschlossen zu stehen an der Seite der Ukraine und für die Friedensordnung so lange, bis der Sieg der Ukraine diesen verbrecherischen Krieg zurückgewiesen hat und die Ukraine in Frieden und Freiheit ihren Weg weitergehen kann in die Europäische Union. Vielen Dank. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you.
Dear colleagues,
Mr.
in these days, it's our foremost
delegation.
ambition, duty and responsibility to show faith in the future and that a better world is possible. We need to find a way to renew the platform for dialogue between non-like-minded people and countries. The Helsinki Agreement and the Paris Treaty both express hope, ambition, and optimism, something that stands in sharp contrast to what the world looks today. Förlåt?
It's Miss Carina Redbring from Sweden who is speaking.
Är det problem?
Thank you.
Yeah. What we up until now have achieved seems today far out of reach. For soon almost 40 years, Belarus has been under the rule of an authoritarian regime where all presidential elections are ruled out as undemocratic. Growing grassroots protests broke out after the election 2020. Independent media institutions and NGOs working for human rights and the betterment of civil society have been forced to work covertly or in exile. Autocratic leaders in search of gaining more power and growing nationalism comes at the cost of democracy. Currently, there are over 1,400 political prisoners and more than 30 journalists imprisoned. Today, the whole political opposition in Belarus is illegal. The country has become a stepping stone for Russia's war in Ukraine. The regime has provided equipment and military training facilities for Russia and has also been a base for Russia's cruise and missile attacks. There is no other way to say it. It is unacceptable and a vile offense against the people. According to Chatham House, the majority of the Belarusian people are against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Even if the OSCE is built on the idea of multilateral dialogue, it is important to use the power of the word and express what reality truly looks like. History will judge those that commit atrocities against the will of the people, human rights, and the rule of law. Our utmost duty and responsibility is to carry on the fundamental ideas this organization is based on, so that we can make purpose and reality one and the same. This is to secure peace, safety, and stability, while also securing legitimacy for OSCE to stay relevant in the future. Dear colleagues, for almost exactly 85 years, we had a dictator standing on the balcony of Hofburg. Our people, our countries have had enough of dictators. Thanks so for the word.
Yeah. Thank you, Miss Carina Redbrink. This session is general session of the three general committee is closed by this because it's supposed to end 10:15. 10:30, do the meeting of the first committee political and security start in this room. So I do kindly ask those of you who are not a member or are interested to stay in the room, to leave the room. And 10:30, do the first committee start here. Thank you.
It's fine. It's fine.